Hey, good afternoon. My name is Grant Erickson. I'm the CEO here at IntelliTect, and welcome to our latest in a series of podcasts that we're doing that are talking about how to integrate AI into your business. So the question is, wait, why are we doing this and what's going on? So we here at IntelliTect, we do lots of things with AI. We've typically built apps and things like that. Lots of cloud-ready applications helping people move to new DevOps platforms or helping people move up to the cloud. And right now, there's a whole bunch of stuff with AI, and we're really starting to see those actual return on investments of people that are investing in AI and doing projects and being able to kind of try things out, taking a step at a time, and really getting a good base and foundation built in, finding those good ideas to really find ways to make that return on investment really work inside of really an AI-driven kind of ecosystem in these particular ways. Now, we're still early on, and so we're seeing a lot of people that are doing this, not necessarily early adopters, but kind of picking it up at the beginning of what we kind of call the mainstream. And here at IntelliTect, we're really driven by several things, but primarily we're driven by what it means to be just to be generous, and that is a lot of stuff that we do, a lot of things like with giving and things like that, so that's a huge part of what we are about here at IntelliTect. And basically the kinds of things that we do, and all of these things are really are AI enabled at this point in time because we're using it in all of the different things, all the different areas. But software development, building applications, things like that, helping people get their data, kind of their data house in order, which is a huge thing with AI, and the actual AI pieces. So doing that, governance, all the pieces that are involved with that. And then really we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. And then cloud and DevOps. So how do I move maybe some workloads that I have currently on-prem? How do I move those up to the cloud? And then how do I really make my DevOps processes? And we're really seeing around AI that AI is exposing the weaknesses in teams' DevOps practices, because basically it takes whatever you have and it makes it faster and it amplifies. And so if you have weak DevOps practices, that's just going to get worse over time. And then really doing those system integrations. And this talks about, hey, maybe I've brought in 2 or 3 different systems and I want to be able to pull those together because I don't want to be cross-entering data and things like that. So, well, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Wendy Corbin, who's going to take us through the first piece of what it means today to build an AI agent. And I really hope you find this helpful as we walk through just a really tangible use case of how can I get started with AI inside my business workflow.
Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. Today we're going to walk you through the how and the why. We used Copilot Studio to automate the creation of our statement of works. So our goal today is to go over this workflow and give the details and the background so that you guys can generate ideas on how you can use AI to automate some of your business processes. So our agenda that we're going to go over today is I'm going to talk about the business need, and then my colleague Dan is going to walk through the actual workflow and the Copilot Studio portion of the automation. And then lastly, we'll talk about the final step, which is the human validation and the human review of the final output. So we determined that we wanted to target the creating statement of works as a workflow that we wanted to automate for a variety of reasons. First of all, we realized that our sales team's time is best spent connecting with our clients and not writing contracts. And then also writing contracts isn't that much fun. So, so the main business problem, first of all, we write a lot of statement of works and a lot of estimates. So there's many documents that we generate every week. We also have a large number of estimates and statement of works in our archive. So what that means is that AI can look at those examples and use those examples as resources and references to generate new ones for us. Also, creating a SOW, we have different types of SOWs, but when we create them, we're generally creating the same sections over and over again. It's very repeatable. As I already mentioned, we have determined that our sales team is best spent connecting and deepening our relationships with our clients, not writing contracts. And lastly, it's about speed. Once we sped up this process, we realized that we were helping our clients be able to make decisions faster because we were getting these contracts to them faster. So why was this process a strong use case for AI? Well, it's repeatable. We do it a lot. The input into the process is pretty standard. Generally, it's a transcript from a meeting with a client. It's notes from a meeting. It's costing information. So the inputs is pretty standard across all of the processes. And the output is also has a template and is an expected actual format. We also felt like this is a good target because we still need to incorporate the human review from a business perspective. So this workflow allows a human to come in and do a final review before sending this off. Lastly, this is a good use case for AI because it doesn't use processes that AI is not very good at. So for example, PowerPoints and design and doing it, which are things that AI isn't quite good at yet. So this is the workflow that we are going to talk about that we automated. So basically the workflow starts with a client meeting, and during that meeting we talk to the client about what their problems are, what issues within their business that they're trying to solve. And in that meeting, we generally make a determination if it makes sense for us to do a full detailed statement of work or maybe just a rough estimate. Usually we choose the rough estimate option when we want to make sure that we have a cost alignment between us and the client. So generally during that meeting, we make that decision. And then we have an internal meeting where we decide on the architecture of the system. We decide on the resources and the timelines and our technical approach. So then we also have a variety of templates, of estimate templates and statement of work templates as well. So AI looks at those templates and those examples and looks at the notes from the internal and external meeting, and then generates a draft. The draft then comes to us, and then we review. Mostly we really focus on the risks because AI isn't that great at identifying risks all the time. Sometimes it is. And then after we do the human refinement, then the final statement of work is ready for client delivery. So before we automated this process, it was very manual. We were collecting notes, we were manually writing sections, we were copying, pasting sections into templates. We had multiple levels of edits and multiple people reviewing it. So now with our automation, we can capture input from multiple people. We can capture transcripts from meetings. We can leverage all of the huge database of the statement of works that we have historically, and we can finalize these things faster. Basically, we're removing all the manual processes associated to assembling these statement of works. So to me, the business impact is significant because I'm spending less time doing something I'm not a big fan of. We are able to automate something that's pretty repetitive. We get a really consistent output. So the workflow develops a template that's consistent across the board. We also are getting these documents to our clients faster, and this helps us with our success in managing our sales pipeline better. So this workflow process is just one example. Really, this whole process can be applied outside of just statement of work. So other processes that would be good targets are employee onboarding, project onboarding, employee offboarding, status reports, anything that's a repeatable action that's done. And even if the process does vary from instance to instance, that's okay, because you can have the human come in within the workflow and be able to make some changes and augmentations to the process. So the big picture is this the workflow, and this example is just one of the examples that AI can be used to be able to support improving business processes across an organization. So now I'm going to pass it over to Dan. Dan is going to go over exactly how we did this, how we took the workflow that I showed, and how we implemented that into an automated process using Copilot Studio.
Thank you, Wendy. So like Wendy said, we're going to be going over the automation of the actual process. And we're going to be building out all of the necessary steps for you to also have a statement of work process. So like we talked about in the diagram, there's an input from a project, and you have a certain set of templates, and then you want to get outputs to a review for the humans. So we have this defined process. How does that turn into the steps that an agent can carry out for us? So when initially planning your agents, make sure to leverage AI to plan out the process and understand the different pieces. But really, if you're leveraging M365, Copilot Studio already has so many of the information and different hooks for your Teams data, your SharePoint, and all the different things that you need. But let's stop talking. Let's just get right into building and just go right into it. So here, I'm going to paste a prompt into Copilot Studio. This is just talking about the SOW process like we talked about earlier. So I want to have a tech lead and a client success director. So we'll go directly in. And while it's loading, just a primer for what we're going to be doing. We're going to be customizing instructions. We're going to be adding tools. We're going to be enabling Work IQ and creating custom topics for the integration of our current project management system. But as it's loading, you'll see just from that simple prompt, you get a lot of things out of the gate. So you get a description, you get a name, you get some instructions that are purpose-driven. So that top, the purpose of this agent is to assist in the statement of work process. So we can scroll down, see all the step-by-step instructions that the instructions have laid out. But I want to point out one specific area, Work IQ. So the reason Copilot Studio is really nice is it can get access to all the context of your information. So this is Teams messages, this is Outlook, this is meeting recordings. So we're going to enable that because we're going to talk about why that's important later. So we've enabled that. Let's dive into the other tools that we're going to add. So in this case, at the end, we want a review process. We're going to do that with a Teams chat. Just a simple, hey, I have this draft. Let's throw the tech lead and the client success director in there and give them the review at the end. So just add and configure this. And a lot of the pre-built tools in Copilot Studio are really simple to enable. Obviously, there's other concerns if they're more complex tools, but this one's a simple one. Here I want to point out one specific thing, fill with AI. So a lot of the tools that you're going to leverage are going to be able to be flowed directly through the system, and the AI agent is acting as the orchestrator. So here I'm going to give it a little more context. Use this tool to create a group chat between the tech lead and the client success director. The more context and specific directions you give around your tools in Copilot Studio, the better it will be at using it, as opposed to, oh, I know I have this tool, but as the user, you say, this is when you're going to use the tool. So now you can see we have our Work IQ Copilot, which are actually model context protocols underneath the covers, and then we have our connector for our Teams. And we're going to add another connector for SharePoint. So we want to be able to create real files in our real system and not just have them ethereally live outside. So let's add a SharePoint connector. And again, we see this fill with AI and additional details. So these inputs are going to be filled by AI, but we can give them more understanding of them so it's not just the name of the file. You don't get to decide on the format. I'm going to ask you, hey, can you specify the format of the file? And it should be in this format. So let's do maybe the client name -SOW -draft, something simple like that. So as we continue to go, and I'm going to add the project name really quick just to make it more specific in my SharePoint. So there's two different sections within this tool. There's this is what you're going to do, hard-coded things like the site address and the folder path that you're specifying and not filling with AI. And then there's the inputs where AI is allowed to hook into these tools to actually create. So I'm going to go to the SOW automation, and we're going to throw it in the drafts folder, just for this simple example. And as we save here, the next thing we're going to look at is the actual knowledge and instructions. So we've created these two different tools. Now, there's understanding on the AI side of what tools it has, but if you're very specific in your instructions about calling out your tools, you're going to get a better, more repeatable pattern. So here we have initial information gathering. So instead of just saying, hey, get your information, we're going to specifically call out one of the tools that we enabled to have it use. So here in the initial information, I want to say, hey, let's use WorkIQ to look up the meeting notes or look up Teams messages or look up Outlook that would be specific and relevant to this SOW that you're going to be drafting. So by calling out WorkIQ, it's more likely to, oh, I have a WorkIQ tool. Let's go and call this. So make sure everything with AI is not trusted. Everything, all the inputs, all the outputs. So clarify any details, and the user should be the final arbiter of truth here. So another one will go down. We also added a Teams tool and a SharePoint tool. So scroll down a little bit on the review and confirm, and then the prepare for submission. Both of these should be leveraging the tools that we just added, but let's call them out specifically. So first, we want to have a group chat with Teams for the final submission. So this should be with the client success director and the tech lead. And then above, all the drafts should be uploaded to SharePoint. So SharePoint and Teams correspond to the SharePoint and Teams tools that we created. So let's go ahead and save these instructions off. And then let's move next to knowledge sources. Knowledge sources are your grounding information for AI. So in this case, it's kind of a simple agent. It's a simple subset of our SOW agent that we're building today, but I still want to showcase knowledge sources, so we're going to add our marketing manifest. What this manifest details is the brand identity and the content strategy of IntelliTect. So this is just a bunch of text that says, hey, this is what we prefer our content and our generated things to look like. Obviously, everything is human reviewed, but at a first pass, if you give it extra information and extra context, AI can do better. So gives the content and brand identity. Let's go ahead and save that off. And that just points to a folder in SharePoint that has a bunch of different text files. So let's go down, scroll down a little more. Topics are going to be the next section that we're talking about. Topics use a more structured line of thinking of dialogue. So as opposed to just any sort of chat, when AI thinks, oh, you're in this topic, you're in this category of conversation, let's actually do specific steps or get specific information out. So in this case, in our case, we have an internal project management system. When a project goes from a normal state to a contracting state, we want to kick off this SOW because that's when we need it. So all the information should be coming from this project management system. So I have this project management system, and I want to intake specific information that I know my system has on the external side. And instead of just free-flowing, oh, well, then you got to go back and forth, let's make sure we get X, Y, and Z information. Things like project name, things like budget, things like time frame. They're already in your systems, should be represented well in Copilot Studio. So the PM system will provide the following information, and then I'm just pulling out all the information that I'm getting from my PM system into a paste here. So I'm getting the project name, the client assignments, all the things that would be standard for a project management system. And this is all AI, so I'm just going to say, create my topic for me. Let's see what it generates. And here, I get a trigger, and I get a bunch of questions. So as you notice, each of these questions are specific things of information that if it doesn't have, it is required to have, and that's what a topic is for. It's for more structured dialogue that if it doesn't have the information, it goes back to the user. So let's scroll down to the bottom. We can kind of see the final message that it would have. So statement of work, we have a project, we have things like a project ID, a project name, a client assignment, things that you would expect in your projects. So let's go ahead and save this off. And let's go back to the overview. So what do we have now from this agent? Let's go back to the slides really quick. Let's just review what we just built, because we now have a purpose-built agent that really has context, some functionality, and some structured processes specifically in the intake area. Agents are only ever as useful as the context, functionality, and processes you can provide and explain to it. So the ones we talked about, instructions, that's how you define the purpose. Topics are how you break down processes into your categories. Your knowledge sources, this is how you store context and outside information into the agent, right? You don't want to have your instructions be super long. You want to be able to delegate to knowledge sources and use a tiered approach. So general information should point at, this is where you would need to go if you need more information on this specific area. Maybe you have things like, oh, my content strategy, I have specific colors, right? But you don't need that for every prompt, because maybe you're not generating content. Maybe you say, this is where you would look for that information, though. And then finally, tools. This is going to be the most important part of Copilot Studio, because it has functionality that bring you into the real world from just a Teams message to I'm generating SharePoint files. I'm calling out to my CRM. I'm calling out to my project management system. And these connectors really get you to the next level of automation. So we're going to dive back in and start talking about more specific tools and flows that are available in Copilot Studio. So we're going to go back. Let's go back to the tools. We're going to add an agent flow. So I want to call out agent flow, model context protocol, and prompts. These are really, really powerful things in Copilot Studio. Agent flows are the first one we're going to do, but within our agent flow, we're going to create a custom prompt, and let me just reload this really quick. Flows are automations that run every single time. They have structured inputs and structured outputs. So every single time it runs, it's either going to have an error or a structured output. So when the agent calls a flow, you get a series of inputs. When you respond to the agent, you get a series of outputs. So here in the middle, it's kind of a WYSIWYG editor. We're going to add run a prompt. And run a prompt is where you really start seeing the power of AI within your workflows, because you're not just creating text walls, right? In this top right, we're going to see output text. We're going to look at some of the different options there. But another one I want to call out is the model. So when you have structured prompts, you can delegate the level of thinking. So if it's a really simple prompt and you can be cheap, use small models. Otherwise, you can go up to higher level of models. In this case, we're going to choose GPT-5 Chat because it's going to be a multimodal output where we want to create a document in this. So I'm going to pull up really quick from on the other screen here my document. So I'm actually pulling a Word template that I've created. Well, I didn't create, Wendy created, that has the specific sections outlined. So we can see here just a normal Word doc that has the curly braces. I'm going to upload this. And you can see this is now the sections AI fills out. It's not, oh, write this whole document and have my brand and all these things. It's actually much more simple than that. It is generate me my template with these specific fields. Now, the instructions are the next important part because you need to tell it, okay, what do I do with this document? So in this case, I'm going to just get it so it will write the prompt for me. So I'm going to say, I want to generate this draft. So, and I have all the different things within it, get me all the information. And throughout the whole process, you really should be using these prompt assistants and Copilot to help generate and scaffold a lot of the basic parts of these prompts. So I want to generate an SOW draft, taking in client context, just all the things that are coming in from our agent and the things that should be coming in from our project management system. So once you get to an end state, you would have a project management system actually give all the information. A user would be pinged, and then they would fill out the key details that maybe were missed or maybe aren't filled out yet. Maybe they had a follow-up meeting later. Or maybe you sit there and say, oh, I actually don't know this. Let me reach out to the client. We didn't talk about an end date. We just talked about the beginning. So a list of pain points, goals of the project, deliverables of the deliverables of a project, and then a summary of insights. And we're going to get into that because like we talked about earlier, we have this big corpus of SOWs that we want to reference. So not only do we sound more consistent, but it also iteratively over time, we're going to get better at our SOWs. So maybe the first draft isn't great from AI. And then we say, oh, there's a lot of changes. So now we put that back into the system and say, now reference this SOW that I really liked and send it to the client. So we're going to draft that really quick. And here, just like before, it generated a bunch of things. The instructions, you are tasked with generating a draft statement of work based on detailed project and client information. So here you can see I have lots of inputs in the bottom right there. And then it didn't save, so got to go back to the document really quick, just make sure that's there. Yep, okay. So you can see we have a couple inputs at the bottom. Please provide the following inputs to generate the SOW draft. Let's go ahead and save this off. So now you can see when we come back out, we had added inputs. Now we need to provide the inputs somewhere. So on the response to the agent and call from the agent, this is where you provide those outputs and inputs. So we're going to be doing the SOW draft, which is just a document type. So here we can see run a prompt is the one above, like we talked about, and it gives us a document output. And that's determined based on the type of output we selected in the top right. So we're going to give it both the SOW draft, but also the AI reasoning, mostly just for testing. So if it fails, why did the run a prompt fail? It gives it a nice finish reason for, this was the reason I gave you this thing. But here, we're going to add a bunch of inputs because the AI that's actually calling this flow, like we saw earlier with Fill with AI, is going to be doing all these different things. So, give us the project context, give us all these other things that we might want. And we're just going to keep going. We're going to add another text. Oh, sorry. And And we're going to do deliverables, where we provide the list of deliverables for our project and features and all these other things. So we're just one by one adding these inputs. And these flows can really quickly get more complicated. For our real SOW, we have different types. So you get conditionals and loops and all these other things that really become where we really become more powerful and very cool. But in this case, we're just doing some text inputs. And next, we're going to talk about adding the enriched summaries. So we have client context, we have client name, and I'm just going to keep plugging away here, adding our different inputs. And make sure we have them all. Looks like I need features and pain points. So I'll add those as we go. And as we're adding these, a thing to keep in mind is this is extensible to different flows. This is not just, oh, statements of work have these types of things, but it's also any process. They're going to have a set of inputs and a set of outputs. So don't just think about, oh, well, in this one specific case, this flow works, but think and start to think about how other processes become automated, because process extraction is still a hard thing to do, and that's where you come in. So here I'm going to be adding all the variables. So when the agent calls the flow is where you're going to see all the inputs. So above you can see time context and features and client context. So we're just going to be adding those in. If you have things like optional inputs, then you would need to do some other work of, you can mark them as optional and then say, when you don't have the option, what do you provide the run a prompt? So we're going to add in our pain points. We're going to add, and it looks like pain points was forgotten, so add another text input and keep on going. And once we have these lists of inputs and these lists of outputs, we're really going to be focusing in on what does this flow generate us. So we, as an agent, are providing, or we as a user are providing the agent hooks, so a bunch of hooks, right? Goals, client name, client context, but it only calls those tools once it has all the information required, because if it doesn't have features, say, and it needs to call the flow with features, then it would go to the user and say, hey, you haven't really explicitly told me the list of features yet. Let's iterate there. And we'll show an example there when we finally test. So earlier, we talked about the examples. We want to be able to pull in information from other SOWs in a common way. So we have some examples in a SharePoint folder. So let's go out to SharePoint, add a connector here to get the folders. And it should be, I think it's list folder. Let me just double check. Yep, list folder, and then we're going to add a site address, add a file identifier. So here I'll show, this is the SOW automation, so it just has a bunch of folders of the different types of SOWs that we do. And really all that's doing is allowing AI to have more metadata information about, oh, this SOW might be more specific to AI or otherwise. But generally, we're just going to be adding those SOW examples into the folder. So one of the oddities about SharePoint connectors is to get a list of folders, you have to actually iterate, so we're going to do that now. So we've listed the items in the folder, and then we want to be able to get the information. But we want to save that off somewhere, so we're going to add a variable really quick, and that's just to hold all the information that we pull back from the SharePoint folder. And we're gonna do a little bit of AI analysis on each of the documents, using run a prompt and one of their custom-made prompts to get insights from each SOW. So for this specific project and this specific client, what insights or things do you need to focus on from previous SOWs? So it's not just, hey, look at these previous SOWs and use them. It is now, look at this in this context, in this specific project, what are important callouts for when you generate the document. So here, I'm just going to be getting the file, wherever that one is, and it's get file content because you know it's like a Word doc or it's a PDF or whatever your SOW format is, and then you go to the same place, right? This is the same file identifier as above, but in this case, we actually want the ID from the list folder. So we add that, and now we're getting the file, and you see it automatically added that for each loop, and that's just saying for each folder that was listed out, or for each item in the folder that was listed out, let's do this thing. So again, we're going to run a prompt, and this is going to be an extraction prompt. We want to look at the document, and we actually want to pull insights from it. So here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create up some instruction files. And this is more simple. We really just want to take the project from the client context and then this document specifically and take insights from it. And this is going to all be text. There's no reason to output a document. This is just pure text because this is just going to be an input into our next section. So take the project and client context, look at the connected SOW, and pull relevant insights from the writing and best practices from the SOW. So here we're going to be adding some text inputs for the project and client context, as we saw above, and then we're going to be adding a document input. So add client context now. And then finally, the SOW document context. And in this case, we're not naming our prompts, we're not naming our steps and all the nice things, but you can get nicer than just a custom prompt. You can rename those outside. So you should be doing that, but for the purposes, we're just gonna go a little faster and go and skip by them. So in this case, it's a smaller prompt. We don't need the GPT-5. We just say, yeah, just go to a 4.1. This is a pretty quick one that we wanna do. So now we have our project context, our client context, and our SOW document. So again, we're just gonna go to when the agent calls the flow to get those inputs. And then the SOW document comes from the get file content in SharePoint. And I've obviously worked with Copilot Studio and these connectors a bunch, but if you don't know, there's also Copilot on the right here that my webcam is covering up that allows you to also, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to go out to SharePoint, and it can start to iterate with you in the specific actions that you want to do. So we're going to keep going. So we are looping through each document, and we're actually going to append to this summary value of what specific information from this document do we want to get. So we're going to add the display name of the file and then the insights that the run a prompt 1 or the action above pulled. So what this is trying to do is generate up a big summary of all the insights, and then we're going to take that big long summary, condense it down with AI, and then have that be the input to our generation document. So we'll do one more, run a prompt, and we're not going to do a custom prompt. We're just going to scroll to the very bottom and pull AI summarize. So Microsoft has provided a couple different prompts that are more common use cases. And you can view what the AI summarize or the AI extraction or any of the pre-built ones, what their system prompt is, and you can adjust from there. But in this case, we're just going to use the AI summarize. Should be pretty simple. So like I said earlier, you can rename those, and those options are nice as well. So now we have a bunch of summaries from running a prompt. So we now have a workflow that looks at our example SOWs for each of them, pulls insights from them for this specific project, and generates them. And here I just showed the optionals and how you can make inputs different if you need a more complex flow. But in this case, we're gonna keep going. Don't want to get bogged down too much in the details, but optional and required, or making them a drop down so only specific values are valid. All are possible here in Copilot Studio. So we're just going to save and publish this draft out, and then we're going to go back to the agent, because now we need to connect this flow as a tool so that when it now has the features and needed information, it can generate up the SOW draft. So here we just clicked flow, and then right now it's untitled, so we'll probably go and rename that just so it's a little easier to find next time. Here you can see this was 26 seconds ago, so we're just going to go and edit this agent flow and go ahead and rename it. And this is just nice because now these flows are not just specific to this agent, but you can actually use them across your organization if you want to share them or publish them in any sort of way. And again, throughout the process, use AI to do a lot of your things. So generate the SOW draft, and then have AI generate my flow description. And it's generating, and then this flow starts when the agent submits project details. It gathers examples of similar documents. So now it tells AI when to use it better. So this description really is important for the metadata and understanding when you want to use this flow over a different flow. So let's save this off. It's loading right now. And then we'll go back to our agent and add this now named flow as one of our tools. And the name is important not just for human eyes, but also for AI. An untitled flow isn't very helpful for AI because then it has to go inspect, and then it doesn't know when to call the flow. So back to the agents, go back to my SOW drafting assistant, and let's go and connect this tool. So we have lots of different pieces that we've now added really quickly with the help of AI. So we are generating structured documents. We are pulling in information from our teams. We are generating up documents to SharePoint and then reviewing them in a Teams-based chat, just like you would any other normal process, right? In a normal non-AI SOW, you would probably create all these things, send them to SharePoint, and then Teams ping the other person and say, hey, can you look at this really quick? But now just a lot of those nuts and bolts and middlemen are now AI. So again, we have now lots of sections of fill with AI that we can leverage. But here, let's just run it. Let's just start our testing. And one quick note, we should actually probably go back. Let's go back to the flow before we do that. The document generation of a flow may fail, so just for my sake of making sure it succeeds in a demo, we're going to go back, and instead of sending the document back, we're going to have the flow send it to SharePoint just to have a consistent file name, and then have the final link just be sent. And that's another caveat to say is the more you can do in a flow and the less you delegate to your agent, the more replicable and more consistent your outputs will be. So here at the bottom, instead of having just respond to the agent with a document draft, let's go back and actually add it to SharePoint just so we can create the file, because we know what we want to create it and all the things. So here, let's just go. We want to put it in the drafts folder, just like we did before, but in this case, we're going to give it the specific file content and file name just to help speed this process up. So same as before, go to the SOW automation. We want to put it in the drafts folder. In the file name, we can either put some sort of naming convention like we did before, where it was project name and project client. So maybe client name dash SOW or something like that. But the output folder also should give us what the name is, so maybe we'll do that as well. So name it draft, and then the file content comes from the AI here as the document output. So document output content bytes is just what the generated thing is. And it also has a file name, so we'll go back and change it to just use the file name that AI generates instead of that for now. And you can name that whatever you want at any point. So we now have creating a file, and then we're going to change the response to the agent. So instead of sending an SOW draft, let's actually send a SharePoint link, which is another action. So we've created a SharePoint file, but let's quickly add a SharePoint create link. And the more you get familiar with these actions and these connectors, the better your usage will be. You run into one problem of, I don't know how to get a sharing link, and you figure it out with AI, and then later on, it just becomes easier. So automations is just like any other skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So here, we're going to look at documents, and the ID is actually going to just be the file that's created. So it luckily returns an item ID, and then we can return a link for viewing and editing, because we want to be able to share that to the tech lead and have them access the edit, and then anyone in your organization, and that's just leveraging the connectors. So let's go and add that sharing link, and now let's go back and test it and see how we're doing. And it takes a second to publish. And if there are questions, put them in the chat, and we'll review as we go. So let's go back to our agent now. Go back to the drafting assistant, and now let's just test it. So in the vein of using a Microsoft tool, we are going to probably use Contoso University, and I'm just going to remove this other tool because we're no longer creating a file. We're just ending up using the sharing link. So again, the tool should be connected to the instructions. So instead of uploading a draft to SharePoint, we're now sharing the link from our flow tool. So just go ahead and change that really quick as well. And I'm just going to double check, make sure that tool saved and was published correctly. Make sure the completion, the output's correct. So I only see the AI reasoning. Let me double check on the flow really quick, see if it is correct. Yeah, the inputs and outputs look fine. Let's click out just really quick to see on the agent flow. And yeah, it looks like it has the draft link, so that should be fine. And we're just gonna go ahead and test it and run it. And this output draft was is going to be the thing we're going to be reviewing later. So I have served on a project upcoming for Contoso University about an HR agent, and my webcam is cutting it off. But so you can see as we're starting to execute, it's loading up the tools that we previously added. So WorkIQ, Copilot, and User were both tools that were enabled when we hit WorkIQ. And then it's going against our knowledge sources. And you can kind of see in a couple different places what the agent is doing. But this allows you to test and debug your agent. So this is running, and you can actually see exactly what's going on. So you can see in our knowledge sources, it's done some web searches as well for governance and rules. And then we uses the get multiple users to see what's information. And it looks like, it has a lot of information. And we didn't use the project management system, so it doesn't have any of the information it needs to be able to call the flow. So it needs things like a project name, project objectives, scope, key deliverables. And I've written out some example ones of the project name and the goals or whatever. But the idea is that once it generates this, or once it is able to call the flow, it will. So I've given it more information about the project and all those things. And it's just working through, and it's actually going against the knowledge source right now to re-review the project, see if there's anything related to it. And here we can see this Copilot tool specifically, WorkIQ, is searching internal M365 content, documents, emails, chats, sites, and files when the specific workload is unclear. So those are the ones that it exposes. There's also specific WorkIQ ones that you can use that scope it down more specifically. So instead of having access to everything, you just wanted to have access to SharePoint or Teams, you can do that as well. And it looked like it said was unsure of what's Wendy's full name. So I'll give it to it, and it wants to include it in the SharePoint or in the group chat for Teams. I gave it my lead. I'm the tech lead, and Wendy's going to be the CSD, and gave it some other things as well. And it looks like it's finally called my generate SOW draft flow. So we're going to be working on that. And that is a slower flow because it's actually going out to SharePoint and using AI to generate and churn through all these documents to look through it. So, and it looks like the draft has been generated. Here's a summary of what's been included and the link to review it. So like the instruction said, it gave us a link to review. And then it needed Wendy's names to be able to create a Teams message with us. So let me just open this up really quick. So this is the generated output, no touches yet, of my agent. So the scope, and there's a little bit of the formatting issues. That's fine, right? It was bullet points versus numbers, totally cool. But now it's able to be reviewed. So we'll go out to Teams. And really, what we've built is something that goes from a chat to structured output and then messages people and is able to be reviewed and really quickly, right? This is not a full flow, right? There's other things. There's a rough estimate that you would need to generate. There's types. But really quickly, in less than, 30 minutes, we've generated something that's giving us structured output really, really nice ways. So what we've built is an AI orchestrator, right? Copilot Studio really quickly allows you to build out an AI orchestrated system that directly integrates with your current processes, right? That template was before the AI workflow because someone was writing SOWs with a template. And the hardest part is still defining those processes in real logical steps. That was the hard part before as well, right? Processes can live in people's mind really easily and really quickly, but by documenting it, you will understand the process better, and you will help AI understand the process better. And then the Copilot Studio agent serves as the orchestrator, utilizing all the different pieces together. But each of the different things that we've done today, agent flows, custom prompts, system triggers, and WorkIQ, really do enable it to generate really helpful things. So agent flows are the repeatable steps and powerful connectors. The custom prompts, like we saw, are generated text, documents, or structured data with JSON. System triggers are allowing you to hook agents directly into your current process, or you can use flows to call an agent to do the exact same thing. And then finally, WorkIQ is your team context, your discussions in your day-to-day become the information that AI needs. But that's been a little bit of a look into building and automating the process. And without that, I'm going to hand it back over to Wendy.
Great at generating a draft very quickly, but it doesn't know your business. It doesn't know your business model. And most importantly, it doesn't have the experience to know what might go wrong in a project. So this is the final output, but the human review process is what really makes this really provide the most value. So when I am reviewing these documents, I like to look at the risks because AI isn't that great at coming up with the risk. It looks for patterns, but it doesn't know what might fail, what might be some human factors that might contribute to risks. It generally is better at assumptions. I read the whole document. I make sure that from a client's perspective that it's agreeable. I make sure that all of the costs and the timelines actually align with what the tech lead has provided me, and that it aligns with our business need from our perspective. So the human is providing the quality control and the final touches to make this be a client-facing document. So all of the applications and all of the tools that Dan was showing are all part of the Microsoft network and part of the frameworks that many of us have if we're Microsoft clients. So that's why we chose to use Copilot Studio as a main solution for our workflow, because we're already using Teams, we're already using Outlook, we're already using all of the Microsoft tools that we can easily integrate with and be able to develop these workflows at a really quick pace to be able to benefit our business. So with that, before I pass it over to Grant, I just want to circle back to our initial goal of this webinar, is to show you this process so that you all can think about the ideas within your business and the business processes that you work on every day that could be automated with solutions such as Copilot Studio. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pass it over to Grant.
Thanks a lot, Wendy, and great job, you guys. Dan, that was awesome. One thing, we'd love to have some feedback from you all, so if you have a chance, go ahead and scan that QR code. This will help us to really figure out what are the things that are making a difference to the folks in the community that we're reaching out to, what's going to help with respect to the different kinds of applications that you're interested in. We would like to do one of these on a periodic basis. We're trying to do kind of one a month. What do you want for next month? What would be really helpful? So go ahead, hit that QR code and give us some feedback there, or share our feedback, some feedback in the comments. We'd love to see comments down there as well. Would give us a lot of just help and direction, and how can we make this better, and how can we make AI more accessible to more people? So if you're kind of wondering, hey, how do I get started with this in our business? It seems a little daunting right now. That's one of the reasons we're here, and one of the things that we do is really looking at what are the kind of those first steps, right? And so really the first step is really a strategy, readiness, and use case design. And this really comes down to, we would come in, help you walk through what your governance models are, what kinds of things you're already doing, kind of meet with each one of your teams, meet with your kind of your main board, or however your organization is structured, or even if it's just a couple of people, if it's a small company, same kind of thing. But really work through those core kind of core tenets of AI and how you implement and begin implementing that into your business. The second one is, hey, once we figure out what those use cases, how do we actually go and do some implementation? That can either be us coming in and doing that for you, or working with your team so they can develop those skill sets. As you saw today with Dan, this is really about data on so many levels. And so a lot of folks have a hard time getting their arms around their data, because it's one thing kind of just turn it loose on your SharePoint or whatever other types of data are really accessible. It's a whole other thing to turn this loose on the data that you're actually using to run your business. Like maybe you're running a manufacturing floor and you want to pull that data back, or maybe you're doing some sales and you want to be able to pull in those sales numbers, a lot of those clients, to be able to start making some more business decisions that are really tied to your core fundamental business data, as opposed to just files or pieces of data that exist in your SharePoint site. So maybe those exist in Azure, AWS, some other site, maybe even in a proprietary SaaS application or a hosted SaaS application. How do we get those out and make them accessible? And then really looking at what does it take to do this on a human scale of helping people in your organizations to adopt AI? Because it's a significant process, right? People feel threatened, all of these different things, and or not even knowing what to do. How do I utilize this? And I think we as human beings, as much as we use tools, it can still be a challenge. And so don't underestimate the change management piece that goes around adopting AI into really an enterprise or organization of any size, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a huge enterprise, whether you're kind of a solopreneur or maybe a small shop. All of those things are going to affect each one of those organizations in different ways. And looking at kind of your strategy, looking at what solutions you're going to go build, how is your data, and then how are you actually going to roll those things out are really super helpful steps. So please feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Whether you're interested or not, we would love to just sit down and talk with you. A 1 hour, just no obligation consultation. We'd be happy to talk and kind of point you in the right direction, whether that ends up you guys using us to do some work or not. We love helping people in this space. So that's it for today. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Again, kudos to Dan and Wendy for a great presentation. Hopefully it was helpful, and we will see you next month.